Hey, my name is Erin Weigel, and I am a designer. I was working at Booking.com as a principal designer, senior designer, UX designer for like 9 years. I'm currently now working at a company called Deliveroo as a senior design manager. But during my time at Booking, I ran a lot of experiments, did a lot of A/B tests.
Yeah, and those are the ones you are going to talk about, as I understand. Even though you have this slightly cryptic title for your talk, it's called "Concept Does Not Equal Execution." Would you try and elaborate it a bit? What does that actually mean?
Yeah, sure. So concept does not equal execution. The not equal part is a nod to the code that we have to write when we're making our experiments, and it's basically about how you could have a really great idea to solve a problem for customers, but how you actually implement that idea really makes a difference between whether or not something is going to succeed or something is going to fail. So you can have the best idea in the world, but if it's a terrible execution, it's still going to fail. And then you have to learn why and then make it better. So that was actually why I really loved working there, because we had such trust and autonomy to figure out what are the big customer problems that we needed to solve, what are some ways that we could solve it, actually coding them up, pushing them to the code base, and then being able to analyze and see how what we've changed either validated or invalidated what we were trying to learn by running the experiment. So it was a wonderful learning experience, and were lucky enough, or I was lucky enough to be able to see it the whole way through. A lot of ownership. There's often a lot of blurring between the roles. So like a lot of the front end engineers or back end engineers, they would have just as much say on the design of how something would be implemented. And, designers would be doing research and copywriters would be coming and, working on designs. So we were all just really leaning on each other's expertise, getting feedback, showing it to each other, constantly iterating and getting feedback from our respective areas of expertise to make each other's tests better. And it was a very unique place to work, but it was definitely not testing, and learning was the responsibility, like you said, of everybody. And it wasn't just segregated into like a growth team or a testing team or experimentation team. Everybody had the responsibility and privilege of learning from the data, be it qualitative, doing the research ourselves, and then quantitatively analyzing experiments that we may have run based on what we learned from our qualitative research.
Yeah. But Booking.com is quite a big company, international as well, all over the world. A lot of traffic, a very big business. And compared to a lot of Danish companies, which obviously Denmark is a lot smaller as a country, and many companies only operate in Denmark. So if you could just sort of like talk a bit about what is it that companies in Denmark can hope to learn from Booking.com, and what can you bring to the table that might help them in the future.
Yeah, sure. So the principles remain the same of testing, regardless of whether you have hundreds of millions of daily active users or if you have tens of daily active users. The principles remain the same. It just depends on how big the changes that you're making. If you have really low traffic, you might have to do things that have way more impact than a micro optimization on something that has like hundreds of millions of active users. But I've also at Booking.com worked on new product development or post booking pages or screens that actually didn't get nearly as much traffic. And I mean, I distinctly remember looking at some experiments where we waited a month and we had like a few thousand visitors in it because it was a brand new, fresh product. But I was still able to lean on the foundational principles of, writing a customer-centric hypothesis, finding an actual problem, and then solving it, and then getting valid results. It just takes a little bit more time, a little bit more patience, but you can do it. It's possible. I've done it. You just kind of have to pick the right things to work on, and you get to know what the right things are after you see the needle move a few times.
Yeah. Well, to me, it sounds a bit like the modern designer, the modern digital designer needs to be so much more than just a designer. As in, you talk about doing some of the research and analysis yourself. So, are these skills that you had to learn? Are these skills that you think the modern designer sort of like just needs to have?
I don't know. I'm just curious by nature. So I don't think every designer needs to have all of these skills, but I really like to understand how things work holistically. I like to take a look at the whole process of things when I'm working on something. So I guess it really depends on what kind of designer somebody wants to be, because there's plenty of roles, maybe just like a UI designer who wants to work on what something looks like, or a UX designer who doesn't really, focus on the interface itself, but really the larger flow. But I'm just one of those people that is more of a generalist than a specialist. So, yeah, there's room for all of us, I think.
Yeah.